I just really wanted to show off my 2024 reading journal. It is so beautiful. Bees! I am obsessed with this, and I just spent my morning filling this puppy out so we can film this video. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Hannah, and this is my January reading wrap-up. All the books I read in January. Now, January, unfortunately, wasn't the best reading month, but we're working on a video project behind the scenes to hopefully revive my joy of reading. So stay tuned for an upcoming vlog where I'm doing a little bit of a secret video project working on some reads. I'm just gonna go chronologically this time, just for fun, just to mix it up. Sometimes I film these videos and organize it by genre or whatever, but this is just gonna be chronological, just keeping things simple so we can move on to some great February reads. The first book I finished that was new to me this year was The Water Outlaws by S.L. Huang. This is a historical fantasy about this female general who has been, she's not a general, she's been the arms master, and she's been training the army for a long time, but she doesn't have any military rank. She just is a trainer, essentially. And at the beginning of the book, she is, there's an attempted sexual assault against her, and she obviously fights back, but it is her commanding officer, and he essentially is trying to kill her and trying to exile her. And so she flees into the countryside and joins a band of mostly women, but not all women, outlaws, which is very not on brand for this main character since she's been loyal and working for the Empire for 40 years. I appreciate this book a lot because there are trigger warnings right up front, so you know what you're getting yourself into. And as far as the sexual assault, obviously it is thwarted, and it's nothing truly happens on page other than the attempt, so I really appreciate that. There is a mute character, and overall I thought this book was really solid. This is a little bit more action adventure than I typically lean. I'm more of a, character-driven reader, and this does lose a little bit of momentum in the middle of the book. However, I did think this was a pretty solid read, and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then we have A Pirate's Life for Tea by Rebecca Thorne. This is the second book in the Tomes and Tea, or Tea and Tomes series. The first book being Can't Spell Treason Without Tea. So this is an interesting one. I didn't love this one as much. I gave it a 3 stars. This is following our two main characters, Chianthe and Reyna, and they're going on an adventure. And so the first one really touted itself as being this cute, cozy fantasy about these two women who are in love. They run away together and open a tea shop / bookstore, and it was really cozy and really about their setting up the shop and getting, making friends with the townspeople and that sort of thing. That's what made it cozy. And this second book is much more of an adventure story. The other thing I will say is that supposedly there is going to be another book in this series. However, the overarching conflict that is introduced in the first book ends at the second book. So I'm not sure where the story is gonna go from here. I didn't dislike this book, but I didn't love it either, and that's why I gave it a 3 star. Another one I thought was just okay is The Surviving Sky by Kritika H. Rao. This is a sci fantasy that has to do with environmental collapse and the earth being a volatile place to live, and so all the people, all the humans that have survive by living on these floating cities controlled by their plant mages who are called architects. And this gives off 5th season vibes, but in this book in particular, the magic users are the ones that control everything and have all the power, and the non-magic users are kind of subjugated and don't have as many rights. And the thing about this book that I didn't like is that it's primarily about a marriage in trouble. This is about our two main characters, Ahilia and Iravan. I hope I'm saying those right. That's how it sounded in the audiobook. And these two have been married for quite a long time, and Ahilia is a non-magic user and kind of a rebel, and Eraven is an architect. He's a senior architect. He is on the council and he's like very high up. And so already these two have been set up to kind of fail. And Eraven's behavior in this book is truly despicable. And even before the start of the book, he does some pretty terrible things. And I honestly wasn't rooting for them as a couple, which is why I didn't love this book, because it's following their points of view. It goes back and forth between Eraven and Ahilia. And I just hated him so much, which is why I couldn't get behind the emotional core of this book. And so I gave it 3 stars. It just wasn't for me. I don't think I'm going to continue with the series, which is pretty disappointing because I was really looking forward to this book. This was one of my most anticipated releases of 2023. On to other things, we have The One by John Mars. This is a sci-fi thriller about this woman who invents basically a genetic software that pairs people up across the world. If you can swab your inside of your cheek and get matched with someone genetically, and that's supposed to be like the one you're meant to be with. So flawed premise aside, this is a thriller, not a romance, first of all, and we're following several different characters and points of view throughout. I think it's like 4 or 5 different couples that have been matched or not matched, and their thrilling stories. I will say this was a lot of fun. I gave it 4 stars. In the beginning, I was a little unsure, and I was a little like, why aren't we just following the serial killer? Because he was the most interesting one to follow. But then the other characters started getting a little bit more into thrillery territory, and I was like, okay, I get it. I'm behind this. I did read this in one sitting, and so that says a lot about it, and I think this was a successful thriller overall. All right, last 2 we have to talk about is Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. Now, this is the last book I plan on reading by this author. This was kind of her last chance, and the reason I picked this one up is because I heard this was her best work to date, so I said, you know what, I'm gonna give her a chance. I didn't love The Love Hypothesis, and I read a couple of the novellas and wasn't super impressed either way by her work, but I'll give her one more chance, and this was a 3-star read. I will say this is better than The Love Hypothesis, so I will give credit where credit is due. But this is following Elsie and Jack, and they are a little bit enemies to lovers, sort of. Elsie has diabetes, which is great representation there, and Elsie has always been like a people pleaser and kind of morphs her personality based on who she's with, and Jack sees through her BS. I will say, Jack, 10 out of 10. Sexy man. There's something about someone who sees you for who you are and sees through your BS and calls you on your bullshit. There's something incredibly sexy about that to me. And that is Jack. He is just very yummy. And so I really liked him as a character. Elsie, not so much. This is again Ali Hazelwood's formula of tiny, quirky science girl and giant, stoic science man. And again, there's nothing wrong with having a small woman and a giant man, but it's every single one of her books. So she has a formula and she sticks to it. And if you like the formula, you'll probably like this book. But for me, I was just like, ugh, okay. All right, come on. So overall, I had a good time reading this, but it's not a great romance for me. So 3 stars. It was good, but not stellar. And then we have Monstrillo by Gerardo Samano Cordova. I'm doing my best here. And this is a literary horror novel about this grieving family, this grieving couple who loses their child in the beginning of the book. He was born with 1 lung, and it was kind of like only a matter of time before this child passed away, and so they are grieving the loss of their child, and the mother decides to keep a piece of his lung and the lung grows into a being named Monstrilio. And so if you enjoy literary horror, I do highly recommend this, but this unfortunately is a 3-star read for me, which I feel so bad about. A couple things were not quite working for me. The writing, for a literary horror, I was expecting like a little bit more from the writing. There wasn't a ton of like atmosphere or eeriness. It was very straightforward, and it could be, I'm not sure if this is true, but it could be a translation issue if this book was translated. This is a debut from this author, could be that, or I could just not jive with the writing style, and that's totally fine. The other thing is, the first half of the book was going swimmingly. I was dying, I was crying, I was, clutching my chest. It was so good. And then we kind of shift gears in the second half of the book, and there is a 3-star review that I will link down below that I really agree with when it talks about there are some competing metaphors happening in the book. And like in the beginning of the book, it was a really solid metaphor for like monstrosity and grief being kind of this monstrous thing, and the different stages of life that this monster goes through versus the stages of grief. Like I was really vibing with that. And then we kind of take a turn and we start having a metaphor about queer sexual exploration and kinks. And I was like, how did we go from here to here? And what does that say about queerness when the monster is queer and behaving badly and doing despicable things to people and killing people? But like, it's this queer, like, coming of age moment. Like, I wasn't quite sure what the metaphor was supposed to be here. And so it just kind of lost me in the second half, which is a real shame because the first half was so good. So overall, this was just kind of fell flat for me at the end. I wasn't quite sure. Maybe I'm just not smart enough for it. That's just quite possible. But this one was just okay, unfortunately. Those are the books that I have completed in January. I actually have a secret video project in the works, so I'm not going to be talking about those books in this video, so stay tuned for that vlog coming very soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video very soon.